When Civ 7 first came out, the consensus was that it was important to find leaders that went with the appropriate civs. So we put militaristic civs with militaristic leaders, economic civs with economic leaders, and so on. But we already knew it wasn't that simple. You could also find some interesting synergies between one leader's special ability and one or two traditions in a civ's civic tree that made for a good combo. And I previously made the point that maybe what we can do is match up civs and leaders with very different characteristics to create a more well-rounded team that covers a number of major resources. By that, I mean if you have a strong cultural leader with some militaristic presence, like we have with Iceland and the Ottomans, you could throw in a strong economic leader to shore up their economies and give them more freedom to do what they do best. In other words, should we drill down into one specific type of victory, or should we diversify abilities and create something with fewer holes, thereby improving your chances of fulfilling your victory conditions? Logic says that when you're trying to meet a victory condition versus the deity AI, you have to specialize and make a beeline for the one thing you're best at. But then we have civs like the Assyrians who become scientific geniuses just by being their conquering selves, or economic powerhouses that can buy their way towards one or more victory types. These are the kinds of things I explore in my Unhinged Combos series. Again, nothing is as straightforward as we might expect or want it to be in this game. These are the things I keep in mind when I look at new DLC content. Okay, if we just dive in, take Sayyida Al Hurra. Her special abilities for deception and generating ships, influence, and culture could help any civ, for example. But her tendency to antagonize the AI leaders could also hurt any civ, so you probably want someone who's ready to rumble, at least defensively. The important other elements are that she generates ships and then their placement in districts generates culture and influence. And she can get away with whatever espionage she indulges in. So you might want to go with a seafaring civ, a culture civ, or a militaristic civ if you're trying to get a direct civ to leader synergy. For seafaring, you'd be looking at Tonga and antiquity, and there's some cultural crossover there, but would she use up all the influence on duplicity, where Tonga would prefer to use influence to befriend independence and set up a trade empire? Mind you, her ships could help with the discovery of independence, but the Tahina, the scout unit, is far more helpful for that. I mean, you could argue that antagonizing the AI leaders doesn't directly affect the Tongan goals with independence, and her ship placements do provide culture and much-needed influence. For me, this combo is a toss-up, maybe slightly on the negative side. Looking at Aksum, I think it's less complicated. More ships are a more straightforward good for Aksum, regardless of how they acquire them, and their gold-making abilities can help any leader. I think this is a less rancorous combo, even if it isn't the most compelling one. I think I like Carthage best for antiquity, given that its basic ships get strong benefits from their civic tree, and then Sayyida gets them plenty of those strengthened ships. And with their ability to settle quickly and broadly, they can build up a reasonable defense or offense to match whatever threats she brings on from other leaders. But the non-seafaring alternatives are defensive civs like the Mississippians and the Han, with their hint of influence. Or maybe even an offensive civ like the Assyrians, who can scoop up techs, while Sayyida brings culture to the picnic. They bring the cavalry, she brings the navy. Or maybe she could opt for the influence-generating Greeks. The problems for Sayyida mount in exploration. By then, she'll have met more leaders, and I've noticed a tendency for her to antagonize the AI into ganging up on her. And the gang is bigger in exploration. So, to make it worthwhile, she has to team up with a strong naval unit civ, which would point to the Chola, or the Majapahit, or the Republic of Pirates. The pirates, to me, seem suboptimal, to say the least, because they already create animosity with other leaders through their piracy. But this is maybe balanced out by getting more and more free sloops. I'm not sure I would want to test this one out, but the Chola are less militaristic and still have a killer ship in the Kalam. I'd be more inclined to go in that direction, even if their influence generation is minimal. Meanwhile, the Majapahit have a cultural bent and a strong ship in the Setbang, but no influence generation. So in terms of naval civs, it's a toss-up between these two. Meanwhile, there's the culture longship blend in Iceland, and that would be a more ideal combination of elements, I think. Iceland, by a little bit, edges out the other two for me, even though they don't offer any help in terms of influence. They have a military edge and can back up Sayyida no matter what kind of trouble she gets them into. And her espionage can net them even more culture, along with some science and many more longboats. Or you could go heavier into culture with civs like Dai Viet or Hawaii. They don't pack the same wallop as Iceland, but they have a more balanced approach overall, which might help. Or you could mix things up completely and go with a strong science and cavalry civ like the Abbasid, and add the influence, culture, and naval advantages for a fully rounded match. That might be interesting, actually. Once we get into the modern age, you could certainly go with her and the Ottomans. It's an historically valid connection. And they do have some common ground in culture harvesting, and the Ottomans are aggressive enough that even if Sayyida starts trouble, they can finish it. I had a rough go with this combo, but a more aggressive player would probably love the free culture and science, and then the wrecking crew that's the Janissaries and the Corsairs. It's a little too hectic for me, but the right player could make easy work of this. Sticking with the naval civs for a sec, you could consider Meiji Japan and Great Britain, who each have top-notch naval units. Great Britain has the antiquarian unit as well to make the culture legacy path go a lot smoother. And Meiji Japan has the hard-to-kill Mikasa, as well as a strong science component to complement what Sayyida brings in terms of culture and influence. Or you might like the steady cultural aspects of Mexico, although the French offer a strong culture game and a reasonably strong military game as well. Or you could go with the very solid financial backbone of Mughal India, one of the civs that the game itself recommends. Meanwhile, Qing China offers a stable economy, some culture, and some influence, although no particular naval presence. But I've saved the almost best for last, I think. The Qajar offer more influence for diplomatic actions, and they have a cultural side thing alongside a decent cavalry. They have things in common, but also things that they bring to each other's tables. I think this might be almost as good as the match with the Ottomans, but just in a different way. But obviously, these are theoretical matches, since I haven't had a chance to play through all of these possibilities yet. Not even close. But I think that Carthage, Iceland, and either the Ottomans or Qajar would go well with Sayyida. I think if you started with Carthage, though, the plethora of settlements would not go easily with Qajar's overall game plan of fewer being better. As for Iceland, aside from Sayyida, there are some good matches. Obviously, Edward Teach, Blackbeard, shares some of their seaward predilections and wouldn't look down on a little pillaging and coastal raids. He could bring in the gold while they brought in the culture. And if you watch this channel, you know how I feel about Isabella. She and Iceland's mutual interest in natural wonders works very well, and even though she doesn't have a strong culture game herself, she does make buying ships 50% cheaper. As far as culture itself goes, you could probably push that with leaders like Catherine, Hatshepsut, or Lafayette. Each of them would round out some of the more jagged edges of Iceland and bring either production, science, or diplomacy into the mix, depending on which way you went. Or you could go with pure military raw meat and hand them over to the sure battle-scarred hands of Xerxes, King of Kings, who could take their navy and use it as a complement to his more land-based forces to create an unstoppable force on land and sea. The combo I like best on the military side, though, is Iceland and Napoleon Revolutionary. Just bear with me. First of all, they both share a strong culture game. Secondly, Napoleon gives a movement bonus to all land-based units, while Iceland gives Napoleon a strong navy. And third, I love the irony of having Napoleon take to the seas again, where hardly anything ever went wrong for him. A close second for a military-cultural land-based leader would be Friedrich Baroque, who could shore up Iceland's attack with a growing series of free infantry units from constructing culture buildings. The odds are that unless you're going to go with Blackbeard or Sayyida, you'll have to go with a non-naval leader. Isabella gets half a point on this count at this point in the game's developing ensemble. And there's nothing wrong with looking to unlikely leaders and experimenting. With the Ottomans, you again have a militaristic cultural civ, but with a very different feel than Iceland. They have the shattering impact of the hard-to-discourage Janissaries and the siege train ability that lets them steamroll over opponents' settlements. The historical matchup is with Sayyida, as I've mentioned. And even though I couldn't make that work very well, I still see a lot of potential in that team-up. Blackbeard, meanwhile, would be happy to take their Corsairs out for a spin and bring back many more in the process. And they might just civilize him at the same time. I could see a culture leader working to some extent, say Catherine or Jose Rizal or Lafayette, but I could also see someone like Charlemagne lining up with their happiness bonuses. With a strong infantry and a strong cavalry and a strong navy and smiles on their faces, these guys would be killer. In fact, the more I think about it, the more I think I have to try this pairing myself. Napoleon Revolutionary could work as well. Yeah, there's the culture compounding, but there's also the extra movement he provides, coupled with the siege train. Yikes, when I think about it. And I also like Friedrich Baroque again. His free infantry would be free Janissaries. So that's a pretty good deal. And the cultural common interest, of course, yeah, I don't want to leave out Xerxes either, King of Kings. But I don't think he's the strongest bet compared to some of these other guys. And again, you could go with leaders that do not seem to be the best fit. Xerxes the Achaemenid, for example, makes every civ a little better, I think, and Amina is not too far behind as far as the economic game goes. They bring a stronger economy to either Iceland or the Ottomans, and that can only help their overall cause. The diplomatic leaders could smooth things out more quickly when either of these civs starts making waves. And a good science leader could help them become more battle-ready with superior tech. Benjamin Franklin meets the Vikings. I can see it. Like I said, there are a few very different ways to think of matching leaders and civs, and it's not like the fate of the world is resting on your choices. And look, my impressions here are early ones and not battle-tested. You can experiment with any combo at all, as long as you let me know which ones work best. I'm always taking notes. Anyway, If you've liked what you've seen or you heard here, please drop a like or a subscribe down below. This has been Civilized Raccoon, and I'll see you next time.